the European weapons were, so they avoided direct battles. And much of the struggles that followed were more of demands for participation in the process of governance and improvements of how Africans were treated. Interestingly, after the World War I, the white settlers were accorded more privileges in governance and land ownership that saw the expansion of the white settlement. These privileges to the whites motivated nationalism among Africans. Groups started to form to defend African interests, especially on the land issue. Some of these early movements included the Young Kikuyu Association, Kavirondo Taxpayers Welfare Association, East African Association, and the Kikuyu Central Association. Even though the demands championed by these groups were not immediately realized, experience was gained. Africans demonstrated ability to mobilize masses at larger scale, the capabilities needed for national movements. These movements were led by young people who had benefited from the mission schools and were competent to articulate African grievances before the colonial authorities. A challenge with these movements is that the power was diverted from the masses and bestowed in the elite, who were then neutralized by the British. The elites were in a way manipulated by the colonial government. Some were even given respectable roles in the government, while others were detained. In this aspect, the Kikuyu Central Association was more difficult to infiltrate and manage by the British, and when Jomo Kenyatta became General Secretary in 1928, he was able to mobilize grassroots support for the organization. Also, he brought better articulation of community grievances to the British when the team visited London. Issues raised by Africans led to formation of Kenya Land Commission. And even after formation of this Kenya Lands Commission, as recommended by the Parliament to look into African land problems, demands by Africans were not realized. Increasingly, land assumed the central place, especially in Gikuyu politics, leading to Mau Mau rebellion in the early 1950s. Now, the main limitation of these early days of struggle by the Africans was that they were focused on locality and failed to organize effective political movements. Then came the World War II. And after making a lot of money during the World War II as suppliers to the wars in the Middle East, the white settlers became very powerful and more comfortable with their stay in Kenya. They even gave themselves more privileges through the parliament. This did not go well with the Africans. Thoughts of governments run by Africans started to grow. Now, to thank Africans for their support during the World War II, the British allowed nomination of Eliud Mathew as the first African in Parliament in 1944. This is where the fun begins. Africans then formed an extra-parliamentary group to support Eliud Mathew. This support group was called Kenya African Union, KAU, which later was transformed to KANU. Now, when Jomo Kenyatta became the president of KAU, he brought a tactical approach with grassroots support and less radical approach to the struggles by Africans. KAU was very moderate and non-violent political community. Its links to the militant group movement, Mau Mau, was concealed from the British. The Mau Mau were basically ethnic group from Jomo Kenyatta's community who were mostly affected by the colonial penetration and the stolen lands. Most Mau Mau members were squatters who had lost land to the white settlers and the corrupt African chiefs. Some were associated with the famous Nairobi business community. And the Mau Mau concentrated attacks on the lives and properties of the Europeans in an attempt to drive them away from their farms. At the same time, the Mau Mau attacked loyalists in the Kikuyu districts. These people they considered traitors included the chiefs, headmen, and others who refused to support the movement. The story of Mau Mau is controversial, and it's coupled with achievements and a lot of sadness. After the British introduced a national state of emergency, the movement was thwarted and thousands of Africans died. But it became very clear that the colonial government could not support and guarantee the safety of the whites indefinitely. Freedom was knocking. The British were forced to initiate an exit plan, and this was coupled with a lot of activities, including grooming a less radical leader to take over, building a pro-British black middle class, and guiding the preparation of the constitution in a way that will protect their interest. Now we can wrap up by looking at some of the lessons learned. The first, why did the British succeed? It is because they had superior weapons, they had a lot of resources, including international support. Remember, the British even had to bring in Indian fighters. Number two, why did Africans fail initially? The main reason was lack of unity of purpose. Every community fought for their own interests, and some even formed alliances with the British. Can you imagine? Now it's only after the nationalistic approach to dealing with the resistance came in that Africans started to make progress. Also, grassroots support and less radical face at the national level gave the struggle a push. Now, how did Africans change their tactics? They learned about the British, their weaknesses and their strength. So learning is very important in every struggle. Let's not go to battle if we don't know the enemy. That's all for now. Thanks for watching and see you again next time.